Anup from Milwaukee, New York. Great folks all over. We're delighted to have you all here. Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Borders, India, the Diaspora, and the Quest for Space Exploration. My name is Sreenivasan, and I'm honored to be your moderator for today. My job is to be time cop and traffic cop, but to really let you spend time with these amazing speakers we have assembled. This is a joint production of Axiom Space, Diaspora, and SAJA, the South Asian Journalists Association. I am the current president of SAJA and the co-founder of SAJA, which is now celebrating its 30th anniversary. We just had our big conference. I'm also an ambassador for Diaspora, which I consider a hashtag life highlight, just like this wonderful event. If you aren't familiar with Diaspora, please check out indiaspora.org and the amazing work that Diaspora is doing across the country and around the world, including their big Forum for Good that's going to take place in February of 2025 in Abu Dhabi. Hope to see many of you there. I will be there myself. We have so many great folks watching. As you can see in the chat, please tell us where you're watching from and please post your questions. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Today, we have three fantastic speakers. I'm going to introduce them to you, and then we're going to have a chat and then take questions. We're joined by Anita Day, who is Strategic Partnerships Manager, Outreach and Engagement at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Hi, Anita.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. It's a thrill to be able to have this conversation with such a distinguished panel, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your work and how you came to be here.
Yeah, so my work, like you said, is partnerships for outreach and engagement. So I've done engagement work for a long time. Before I was at NASA, I was at the Federal Communications Commission doing consumer outreach work. And I've been at NASA for about 6 years now. And I've had the pleasure of working on amazing projects like the James Webb Space Telescope launch, its launch and its first images. We did some big work there. And then, of course, we just had the eclipse in April, the total solar eclipse. I've gotten to do really fun work there as well. And now I make sure that we are working with organizations around the country to spread NASA's good work. Thanks.
What a job you have, and what an opportunity for us to hear from you. We watched you during the eclipse as you were on TV. I think you were on for many, many hours, just one network after another. So this is like our chance to talk to you directly. Thank you, and thank you for NASA's support of this conversation. We're also joined by Tejpaul Bhatia. Tejpaul is the Senior and Chief Revenue Officer at Axiom Space. Tej, welcome.
Thank you, Sree. Good to see you. We see each other every couple of years on panels and randomly on the street. We first met probably 25 years ago at Columbia. And it's good to see you always leading and being true to yourself and bringing the community together. With that, I want to thank the SAJA team in Diaspora, the Axiom team. It's amazing that we pulled this together and pretty quickly. I think from a random text we got from Sree called Houston Friends. He just shows up and says, it's 5 p.m., let's meet for a happy hour. And luckily, Pearlie was able to join him. So my name is Tejpaul Bhatia. I go by Tej. I am Chief Revenue Officer of Axiom Space. I joined the company about 3.5 years ago from Google. And then I was a startup founder for many years. And I got my start at ESPN and Disney, another time that Sree and I overlapped quite a bit on the streaming media and digital media side. We're super excited to have you all here today. Axiom Space has been around for 8 years. We're building the replacement to the International Space Station. And in a few years, you'll start seeing our modules going up and docking onto the International Space Station. You may have also heard of our spacesuit. It's the suit that the next astronauts who step on the moon will be wearing. We had a big reveal this week or last week in Milan. And then the third part of our business is missions to the ISS. We've done 3 so far. Our first one was a group of private individuals who went up, commanded by Axiom. The second mission was our first international mission. We sent Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia. They sent a man and a woman, the first female Arab astronaut to go up. It was 2 Americans, 2 Saudis, 2 men, 2 women, 2 pilots, 2 scientists, and it was a phenomenally successful mission. Our third mission earlier this year was the all-European mission, all national governments, Italy as pilot, Sweden as mission specialist as part of the European Space Agency, and Turkey sent their first astronaut up as well. And next year will be our fourth mission, AX4, and you have the privilege today of, or I have the privilege today of sharing the screen with the assigned pilot, Shubhanshu. We call him Shux. And Shux, I'll hand it over to you if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can get started.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it over from you. Thanks, Tej, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, also known as Shux. And as Tej has mentioned, I'm the assigned mission pilot for Axiom 4 mission. And frankly, I'm just glad to get some time off from the busy training schedule that I had. So thanks for having me on board here. I have been a pilot with the Indian Air Force for almost 17 years. And during this career, I flew a variety of aircraft and later on qualified as a fighter combat leader, something akin to Top Gun that we have in US. And thereafter went on to graduate from the test pilot school. And after that, I was doing my service as a test pilot when this opportunity came up for me to be the astronaut. And, one thing led to another. We got selected and here I am today. So it has been a really interesting journey for me, and I'm looking forward to this discussion with all of you esteemed people on the panel. Thank you.
Congratulations for being assigned to this particular mission and on all you've achieved already as you have group captain. So we appreciate you being here. And I like that we were able to get you some time off from what I presume is very rigorous training. So thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask each of our team members or panelists some questions, but I want to start, of course, with Shux to ask him about what inspired you to become an astronaut, and tell us about that part of your journey.
So if you really want me to put a finger on one event that inspired me to be an astronaut, I won't be able to do so, but I do have a common thread that attaches all of it. So the first Indian astronaut, he traveled to space in 1984. I was born in 1985, so I wasn't around when that happened. So, but I did grow up listening to the stories, and he was a national hero. And
Rakesh Sharma,
Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, and so he was a national hero. We used to read about him in our textbooks and learn his name whenever the general knowledge exam used to be there. And I grew up reading all about him. And the names like Kalpana Chawla was very famous. She was a national hero back then as well. So these personalities, they deeply influenced me, motivated me, and really inspired me. But probably rationality, kind of played out a bit, and I never imagined that I would end up being an astronaut, because probably there wasn't a space program with us, and there wasn't a possibility for us to be an astronaut at that point of time. So I was deeply inspired, but it never led to me thinking that I would probably become an astronaut. I decided a different path, that was joining the Indian Air Force as a fighter pilot, which I really loved. And during the course of my career, I would say there were several opportunities which necessitated that I say a yes or no. And these opportunities, whenever they presented, now when I look back, I see that I was kind of excited always, and to say yes to each and every opportunity that came my way. And probably those steps paved the way. And the latest one was in 2017, as I said, that I applied for being a test pilot, and I got through. And in 2019, I was serving as a test pilot, and that put me in a position which made me eligible to apply for being an astronaut. So there is no single reason that actually inspired me to be here, to be an astronaut, but there was a series of steps. And I think my desire to be open to the opportunities that presented themselves, and be excited about the unknown that is going to come forward, and that gradually led me to where I am now. So I think that would be my answer to you.
That's a great answer, and as you said, there have been Indians in space before, Kalpana Chawla, Rakesh Sharma, and we now will get to see you. So can you tell us a little bit about the timeline so that people can understand exactly what they can expect?
So you mean the timeline for the Axiom 4 mission, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So right now we are under the training for the Axiom 4 mission, and we need to complete a lot of training before we are, eligible for the flight. Right now we are looking somewhere in April 2025 that the mission is going to be launched. But again, as with all these dates, these are flexible depending on a lot of factors. But we are preparing ourselves for a launch date somewhere in April next year, and that is what we are hoping to achieve.
Excellent. Thank you. Anita, let's go to you and NASA. Tell us about the work that NASA is doing with India. And this is just one example.
Yeah, absolutely. But before I get into that, I would just like to say that Shux makes it sound easy, even though he's referred to the amount of training that he's going through. I want to emphasize that space is hard. So that's why, what he was referring to with the launch date might move. This stuff is so hard, and I'm just in awe of Shux and all the other astronauts who do this work and the people who build the machines that they fly on. I mean, this is all extraordinary. But NASA is incredibly proud to be working with India on space exploration. We've worked with India for 60 years, which is extraordinary to think about. We're very excited to have our first Indian astronaut go up to the ISS, the International Space Station, soon. But we also have other work going on. My mission directorate in headquarters is science. So we've been thinking a lot about the NISAR mission. It is a joint NASA and ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization project. And it is going to, be up in space and use two kinds of radar to reveal the Earth's systems, the complex systems, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes. We will be able to see more about the Earth thanks to that joint mission. It's going to be extraordinary. And it should launch in early 2025. We also have a joint cooperation agreement with ISRO to do more work in low Earth orbit. And there's a working group that meets roughly every 2 years to examine all of the collaboration in civil space exploration between India and NASA. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that India is a signatory to what we call the Artemis Accords. It is a set of rules to govern the peaceful exploration of space. And there are 45 signatories, and we're very pleased that India is one of them.
Thank you. And when we mentioned Indians and Indian Americans in space, of course, astronaut Sydney Williams is in space as well. Yep. She's expected to return sometime in the new year. And I remember she told her mother a couple of months ago not to worry, everything's going to be fine, which tells you how gutsy she is. And all astronauts, including our friend Shux, how gutsy you have to be able to take this on. All right, let's go to Tej. Before we do that, folks are watching from around the country. Please tell us where you're watching from. And if you're awake late in India and watching as well, let us know that too. I see Farhan's watching from Houston. Dr. Lula is watching from Houston. Siddharth Shah from DC. Kumu is watching. Kumu Gupta. Diane Patrick from New York. We're so happy to have all of you. Post your comments, post your questions in the chat, and we'll come to them as we can. So let's now go to Tej. And Tej, tell us a little bit more about Axiom Space and how you came to be at this very important juncture and as a convener of these very important projects.
Yeah, excellent. Sree, you're very good at this job, by the way. I think I'm very good at my job. And I think Shux thinks I'm very good at my job too, because he gets to fly. But a couple of points I want to make. Shux mentioned that 40 years later, after the country's astronaut, he'll be going up. And a very interesting coincidence is his crew includes Poland and Hungary, who also have the same milestone. 40 years later, after their last country citizen has gone up, they're going up. So this mission is historic in multiple ways. And also they're the first citizens of their countries going to the ISS. So what Axiom is doing in terms of opening up access to space, along the lines of the Artemis Accords like Anita, that we're in a new era. Historically, space has been for a very select few governments. 15 probably, with the occasional visitor. And just in the last 3 years, or once AX4 goes up, we'll have sent 16 more people to the ISS and trained them properly as astronauts, and really created what we call Apollo moments in their countries. And I think what's beautiful about this mission, especially about Shux, well, there's several things that are beautiful about him. One, he was born in 1985, so it's hard to believe how young he is. Second,
I can't believe he's been training. He's been in the Air Force for 17 plus years.
Yeah, and then
It's 20 now.
He's the one guy you could find who has a fuller head of hair than me. Sree.
Don't rub it in.
I'll tell you a funny story about Shux in a second, though. But what's interesting here is 2 years ago, this concept wouldn't have even been possible. And if you ask anybody, they would have said it's impossible. My story of how I got here is I've been a space nut since I was a kid. There was always an excuse why I didn't become an astronaut or try. Like literally, I didn't even try, but it was, my eyes were bad. I couldn't do pull-ups. I got a C in chemistry and didn't go to grad school. And these are all requirements, to apply to NASA. And then a few years ago, when I started to get back to my own self-awareness and my passion, I said, this is something that's always been part of me, and it doesn't need to be a hobby. And I got into space by investing. Axiom Space was actually my first angel investment. And my thesis was, I'm going to learn. This is an area that I'm passionate about. I'd made a couple of other investments. I was working at Google at the time. Axiom called me and asked me for advice on go-to-market strategy. And 4 months later, I joined them as chief revenue officer, and here we are. And this concept of India flying, like I said, it not that it didn't make sense, but a commercial company, a startup, is going to now partner with NASA and ISRO, the government of India, the US government, and the whole deal got done in about a year's time or less. So think about the large democracies and the negative connotations that come with bureaucracy and doing business with governments, doing business with India, getting paid, getting through all the procurement, and in an election year. And we pulled all that off. And we pulled it off in style. And I'll tell a quick story, then I'll hand it back to you. When Shux and the crew came, we hosted a meeting with all the executives. And it was like an hour-long meeting. We had the entire crew, and Shux is back up. We call him Papa, Prashant. We're in the room, and I looked at my watch, and I said, guys, I'm really sorry. I got to pull Shux and Papa out. We have a VIP meeting we have to do in my office. And I pulled them out 5 minutes early, and I FaceTimed my parents. And Shux and Papa just said, Sat Sri Akal, Uncle, Auntie. And I'm going to start crying just even telling the story. I couldn't believe that this all just came together. And it wasn't until that moment that I realized that this is all extremely connected. And us authentically being ourselves matters, and getting the deal done and just doing it with NASA and ISRO. I almost never even connected that identity, but now it means a lot more to, multiple generations of people like us all over the world. And, we're very proud.
We're proud of you, Tej, for playing that role. Let's go to Shux to tell us a little bit about that moment when you found out you would be the assigned pilot. What was that like? And tell us a little bit also about this training procedure, which I'm sure we've seen versions of training process, the training procedures on TV. I'm sure it's even more intense than it looks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that question. I actually remember as to how this was when this selection was happening, and it was quite a long, drawn-out process for us. We knew that India is going to do a mission with Axiom and with the Axiom 4, and 2 amongst the 4 of us would be going for this mission, but we didn't know who. And so there were quite a few months between this information that 2 of us would be traveling and the final names being announced. And it was a period of uncertainty, anxiousness, and a period of long runs with music on just to calm down your nerves and keep on with your job. And so finally, when the news did break out, I would describe my feelings as extreme elation. I was really, really happy about this. And but I want to emphasize this. I was happy when I was selected as one of the 4 astronauts when the first selection happened back in India. I was also happy when our Honorable Prime Minister announced our names formally in front of the entire country in February 2024. But this was something different. It was because the the possibility of being in space was, it suddenly it seemed real, that it's not a distant dream anymore. And after the training, and probably you'll get a chance to be in space, which is really like a dream. And I saw it becoming real very soon. So I think this was very, very distinct from the other two occasions that I have. So it was a different kind of happiness. It's very difficult for me to put it in words, but yes, it was something else altogether.
So you've done a great job putting it in words. So I appreciate that. Now put in words the pain you've gone through in the preparation.
So the training, what I've realized is that I have been, if I look back, I have been under training for most of my life, ever since I've started learning, because in aviation also we have a similar pattern of training that we follow for being an astronaut. But the difference is that there are certain disciplines that get added on over and above what you do in aviation. And so essentially what it involves is that you need to go in a machine, fly a machine, and you need to go to a certain station that's also a machine. So it is interesting that you obviously will need to study about it. That's the theoretical part of it. You learn about the system sitting in a classroom or going over the course material. And once you have sufficient knowledge, then you move on to practical exercises, actually operating that machine. And that's the simulators that prepare you for it. So like in this case, we are going to be practicing for simulators on SpaceX Crew Dragon, and as well as a lot of simulator sessions on the ISS. The interesting thing is that when you're practicing simulators, and it may seem counterintuitive to a lot of us, that almost 80% of the time of simulator training goes in preparing for situations that you do not expect to happen for 90% of the time. And that's a really interesting part, because that is when it is required for the crew to be really up for the task. And so you repeat them again and again for the off nominal scenarios, for things when they go wrong. And that's the maximum amount of time that is spent during this simulator training. In addition to this, yeah, please go ahead, Sree.
No, please. I don't want to stop you. I'm feeling the pain already.
Not the pain, it's all fun. You need to try it.
Remember, your bosses are watching. They may decide to give you more fun, so just be careful.
Several other aspects that I said get added on. So this is quite similar to what we have in Air Force, but the added effects are those of physiological types. Your body gets exposed to a different type of environment, and the G loads that you experience while going to the space and while coming back, and also the experience of microgravity, how your body responds, and how do you get used to it. There can be situations of, there is a lack of oxygen, or, excessive buildup of carbon dioxide. So all these are different situations which you are exposed to on ground, so that you understand as to how your body is going to react. And also you should understand that something like this is happening to you, so that you can take remedial measures. And that is very, very important. So this is a very big vertical, I would say, under the entire training, which is very, very important for us to understand. And in addition to this, there are three other separate heads that I would think of. One would be psychological training, because space, as Anita was mentioning, space is hard, and I'm not going to contest that, absolutely, because once on station, you are deprived of all your sensations, whether it is visual, whether it is acoustic, whether it is, you can't smell, you can't, you see the same thing, you hear the same thing, and you have no sense of smell for a long period of time. It is stressful. And you're working with a group of people. So the psychological preparation for this mission is to be really, really strong. And that's a big chunk of this training as well. And along with this, when you go up in space, you go there for a purpose. And that purpose is to do certain scientific experiments. And so you also train on all those payloads and those experiments on ground many times, so that it kind of becomes a muscle memory for you. And when you go up there, there are no doubts in your mind, and you're able to perform them as effectively as you can. So I hope I've covered all the aspects of this training. And
you certainly have. And we salute you for what you've already achieved and what you're going to do on behalf of India and all mankind, as they say. Let's go to some more questions. And I want to ask Anita about how do we ensure that what is NASA doing to ensure equal access to space, and also diversity in the folks who get to go up to space?
Yeah, it's such an important question, and Thij, referred to it earlier. Having these private space companies increasing access to different countries to be able to go to space. That's step one. Things like the Artemis Accords are another important step. Ensuring that countries have access, and we're talking about the leveling the playing field for people who are going to explore space. But to work on the diversity of people who are not only going to space, but thinking about space. NASA works really hard at trying to ensure that inclusion is a big part of what we do. Actually, a few years ago, we made inclusion one of our core values. So it's something we talk about a lot, or maybe it's just because it's me. I talk about it a lot when I'm doing my day-to-day work. The term that we tend to use is broadening participation. Not just the people who are NASA fans, not just the people who are highly educated and privileged, but how are we reaching people who aren't going to the top universities, who maybe are socioeconomically disadvantaged, trying to think about all of those things as we do our outreach work. Internally, we also think about these things. We have employee resource groups. I was the president of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander employee resource group. And the goal is to just try to create community for that affinity group. So we feel like we're together in something. And sometimes we also get to provide policy advice to NASA, depending on what's going on. So one thing I will say that is not NASA's opinion, this is strictly Anita speaking, is about our role as Indian Americans. Personally, I feel that I have some privilege. And for those who are not American here, privilege is this idea of having an advantage in society. And generally, we think about privilege coming with the majority. But I think Indian Americans have a certain amount of privilege because the majority seems to subscribe to this model minority myth. If you haven't heard of it, it's this idea that Indian Americans, we are pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. We're working hard. We're doing all the right things. And there's no problems. There's no discrimination. We're doing fine. And I think we do work hard, but there are definitely problems within the system that are disadvantageous to us as well. But I think that level of privilege also gives me the responsibility to speak up and say things that maybe people from other minority groups cannot say. So when I was, the chair of the ERG, I would do my best to also advocate for, the folks in the African American ERG, Hispanic ERG, the Pride, gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual ERG. So I think that is my responsibility. And I hope that's how I contribute to making space more diverse someday.
And you're already doing it. So thank you. Thank you for that. Shux, let me ask you about being the first Indian to travel to the ISS. How do you hope your mission will inspire technological innovation and workforce development in India?
So, like I said in my previous answer, right, when I got inspired. So I think human stories about space are the most inspiring ones, and they have a totally different kind of impact. And towards that, I would say that we've had one story, which was in 1984, and that ended up inspiring millions of kids over a period of time to, pursue their careers in the field of science and space. And a lot of people joined ISRO in various capacities and turned into ISRO into what it is today. But after that, we have had a long gap, as Tej was mentioning, 40 years plus. And my hope from this mission is that I'm able to, add a new chapter to this book or inspirational stories, which inspires an entire new generation to see that what is possible, what can be done, and space is accessible to us. It's not too far. And there is a slight difference this time, though, as compared to the last time. We are also in our journey of our own human space mission called the Gaganyaan, for which we were actually selected. and we were preparing for that, and Axiom 4 has come in between. And so how I see Axiom 4 is like it is acting as a stretched out catapult for us, which will give us the initial momentum on this very, very long journey that we are planning to undertake in future. So, and I think all of us understand very well that the human space missions are, of different nature altogether. They involve development of totally new technologies, and new systems have to be developed, and an entire change in mindset has to come when you are trying to undertake something of such map and nature. And I think that creates a demand in the country. And so I hope the inspiration that we draw out of this Axiom 4 is able to inspire an entire new generation. And we would be looking out for such inspired people, and there will be places where they'll fit in to make our own human space mission a reality in future.
Thank you. Folks, you're listening to this amazing conversation with these fabulous folks talking about space exploration. We have about 30 minutes left. Get your comments in. Tell us where you're watching from, and also post your questions. Natasha says, thank you, Anita, for your comments. And Siddharth says, agreed that there is a broadening of participation, includes reaching out to every marginalized community. So thank you for doing that, Anita. Tej, let's talk to you a little bit about more around where you see Axiom going and the private sector role in India-US partnerships.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sree. And what Shux represents is what I'd call one of three legs of the strategy Axiom has in India, and in fact, in every country we go to. We call it inspiration, infrastructure, and industry. And the inspiration, and just to say, Shux will be covering all three in his mission, but as outreach, a spokesperson for a nation, going and speaking to girls and boys and everybody who's inspired to see this is a big deal. We know this is going to drive a lot of students to join the sciences and follow their dreams. They're going to see it's possible. Our Turkish astronaut from the last mission said, growing up, I always knew that the sky was the limit, but now girls and boys in my country know that's just where you start, right? And it's a big thing. And now, especially with India, this is going to be game changing, literally game changing, just on the geopolitical access standpoint. But that's just one leg, inspiration. The second is infrastructure, right? So as low Earth orbit transitions from a government area to a commercially operated area, so companies like Axiom and our station going up, that's a global supply chain. That requires best of breed from every country, and we want to partner with India. We want to partner with their space companies and their non-space companies on development of our station, development of their station, development of our suits, but also there's several launchers coming out of India. Private companies, startups, really cool startups. I visited one in Hyderabad, Skyroot, and you go and, it looks like you're at, name your rocket company that we all love. It looks like that. And they're going to go up. So there's a need for us to actually have those companies competing for business. So that was the infrastructure side. And the third is industry. We have a very strong dedication, I'll say decision at Axiom of what space is going to do for humanity, right? There's 60 years of science that have proven that microgravity helps us understand aging and cancer and certain advanced materials in a way that you can't do on Earth. And this third step, industry, is how do we get non-space companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the tech companies, the semiconductor companies, the data companies into this space? Because when we say low Earth orbit economy, that assumes two things. It assumes there's new money coming in, not just government taxpayer money, and values being created so that more entrepreneurs create more business. And we see India as prime for that. So Shux, as much as we love you and we know you're going to do phenomenal, really the burden you're carrying right now is much bigger than that, which is not just India, not just human population, but society as we leave the planet and the economic development that's going to be necessary for us to first become interplanetary and then interstellar.
I love that.
Thanks,
Vin asked a question directly about the sudden rush of activity that seems to be happening in space in the last few years. What are some things we can see up ahead, Tej and Anita? Maybe you both have some thoughts on what are some milestones we should look forward to.
Did you want to start?
Sure. So like I said, we're at this inflection point. And Sree, I think you're going to like this a lot. Shux, you were too young to probably remember. In 1993, there was this thing called the internet that was coming about. And there was a moment where if you knew just even 10 years later the impact it would have, and you went back to 1993, 1994, 1995, and there was guys like Jeff Bezos saying they're going to sell books online, and everyone thought they were crazy. And Steve Jobs saying he's going to put 1,000 phones in your pocket. To actually be able to connect that to cloud computing and mobile, it's just not even possible. But if you were able to go back in time and invest accordingly, you would do really well. I think we're in that 1994 moment for space right now. And it took all this time. Things happen, they happen gradually and then exponentially. And we're at that inflection point. And I think a decade from now, we'll be surrounded by things that we didn't even know were possible or that existed because of space. And I think there's some very important ones, like potentially a cure for cancer. And I hear the possibility, and I'm a very impatient person. I'm not going to sit around and wait decades for it. I actually don't even think I'll be around for that. So if we at Axiom and we in the world have the opportunity to do it, I think we just decide and we do it. The will's there, the technology is there, the economics are coming down. So I think three main areas you're going to see before the end of the decade. Major advancements in what I call orbital data centers with advanced compute going off planet and being in space to support Earth or to support space communication and then deep space communication. Second area is pharmaceutical in the broadest sense, medical science devices, but commercial reasons, cures for diseases that we've been trying to solve that will solve very quickly. And then advanced materials, particularly around semiconductors. I think we're going to see a lot of game-changing technology coming out of space in the next 3-4 years.
And I'll add to that. Yeah, the inflection point that they're just talking about is absolutely right. And I think from NASA's perspective, the inflection point is the government's job, at least in this case, is to take risks, is to do the risky things that isn't economically viable yet for industry. But now we've come to the point where low Earth orbit is becoming more viable. It's been established, here we are, we have all these companies that are exploring this space. So no, NASA can spend its time going beyond, talking about going to the moon, going to Mars eventually, and that is going to push humanity further and further. So we all have our roles to play, and we've just hit this point now where those roles are becoming more clear. And we can see what industry is capable of doing and what NASA is also capable of doing.
Great. Thank you very much, folks. We have about 15, 20 minutes left, and we have lots of questions coming in. Please keep them coming. We want to get to as many of them as possible. And I want to ask a little bit about the way that the Indian culture has played in this exploration and how we can kind of think about that as the next way of thinking about India's heritage, the values of India, what it's contributed to the global industry, right? We're talking now about Shux and others, but so many people who worked in Huntsville, in Alabama, at the NASA facility there, or the Johnson Space Center, or in Cape Canaveral, or in headquarters. So talk a little bit about what you see about the Indian culture and its impact on all of this. Anita, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And again, my standard disclaimer, this is Anita talking, not NASA talking. I think Indians and Indian Americans are natural pioneers. And we don't even think of ourselves that way sometimes. We think of pioneers doing the really big things, launching rockets, going to space, like Shux, for example. And it's true, Indians have done these big things. Ancient India traded with the Roman Empire. Can you imagine how far west that was? Civil servants and traders also went so far east, all the way to Japan. Extraordinary exploration and extraordinary thought that went into that, spreading Sanskrit, spreading literature, spreading the religion, spreading written language. Southeast Asia did not have written language, it's spoken language, obviously, before the Indian civil service showed up. An Indian mathematician astronomer, Aryabhatta, gave us 0, gave us the number that tells us the absence of something. Without that number, nobody would be going to space. So, much like in my big fat Greek wedding, we can say Indians are the reason for going to space. So there are these big things, obviously. But there are these everyday things too. Immigration. My parents came to this country in 1972. And when they came, maybe they thought they came to a different planet. Maybe the people who saw them thought that they were aliens. I mean, who knows? It was such a different place then. But the act of leaving your home to go to the extremely unfamiliar, that is what we will do someday when we live in space, when we colonize the moon, Mars, wherever we go. So that experience puts us, it gives us, I guess, an advantage, to be able to create something new. And even for people like me, I was born in this country, so my everyday life seems very ordinary in that respect. But my mother didn't work outside the home. She had a master's degree in philosophy, but she chose to be at home with us. And I know many women, probably have that same experience where they didn't see their mothers work outside the home. And yet now here I am forging this life. I have 2 small children. I also have a brother. So my mother did the 2 small children part. But now I've added this, this job on top of it. So how do you live? How do you form this life? So the act of combining cultures, taking what you want from one, leaving something behind, taking what you want from another, leaving something behind. These are all acts of building a society. And that's what we're going to do someday, maybe a few generations from now, who knows, in space. So I think this process puts us and other immigrants as well in a position to really be able to thrive off planet.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Shux, is there anything about your training that has made it easier for you to do the NASA training? Something you did in India at the Indian equivalent of Top Gun, you said you were a fighter pilot, etc. So tell us.
Yeah, before that, but first I would like to compliment Anita for, saying the thought that she said. I think that is beautiful. And for us to understand that, I do have an analogy that I like to believe in. And I think all of you would understand this when we are young and, starting out and you start your school and you speak to somebody who's outside of your school is the place that you say, oh, I'm from so-and-so school. That is my territory. And then as you grow up, you grow out of that school and you go to a different city for work or something. Then your city becomes your home, right? And you say, oh, that's my territory. I'm from that so-and-so city. And then you leave your country and you go to some other country to work. And then your country becomes your territory or your identity and say, okay, I'm from India. And so now what do you do when you leave Earth and go to space? So the Earth becomes your territory, or this becomes your home as humans and humanity. So I think that was very beautifully put. I think that's the sentiment that I think we should all carry forward in this journey that we are undertaking. I think it's a very unifying experience for all of us when we try to look forward towards this space exploration. And so coming back to your question, Sree, I think my training did prepare me very well for the aspects of space exploration. Military training is hard. It's quite hard. So we do undergo a lot of similar training as well. And the fact is that you are also doing something regularly in the Air Force, which we can kind of summarize it as saying that you become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's the essence of the entire training. And that is exactly what, in part happens with the astronaut training as well. that there are scenarios, there are situations you have to sit in a crammed up suit, which is, really squeezing on you in a position for hours and hours together. And it is not going to be comfortable. There are going to be a lot of different situations that are going to happen to you. And so you practice over a period of time. And before you get into that situation, you know that it is going to be uncomfortable, but you're prepared for it and you're okay with it. That I'm fine with being uncomfortable in these situations. And having flown fighters, particularly, especially experiencing certain off-nominal situations that happen, and things when they go wrong. Over a period of time, I really understood as to the most important reason or the most important requirement at that point of time is to be calm, so that you can really apply your mind in solving the problem and not let your emotions take over. And that was an acquired lesson for me over a period of years, and I think that would help me very well for this particular mission and maybe in future as well. So yes, to answer your question, I do think that my training back in Air Force has really helped me for undertaking this journey.
Excellent. We have about 10 minutes left and we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to come right to them. We have two questions from SAJA members that are similar. Vignesh Ramachandran of the Red, White, and Brown newsletter, and Rakhi Mirchandani, who's author of the Kalpana Chawla book I'm holding in my hand here. I want everyone to see it. It's called She Persisted, and it's Kalpana Chawla, written by Rakhi Mirchandani, a beautiful book. And this is about, obviously, the late Kalpana Chawla. They both had a similar question, so let's start with Anita on this. In what ways are you thinking about inspiring the next generation to get into space exploration? So we'll ask all three of you.
Oh, that's such a big question. I'm so lucky that my day job is all about inspiring the next generation. And again, I'll go back to this idea of broadening participation, making sure that we reach people that NASA doesn't normally reach, exposing them not just to extraordinary people like astronauts, but also kind of ordinary people like me, that it takes all kinds to work at NASA, because a lot of people tend to think of NASA as like this hallowed place that you could never approach. No, normal people like me work there too. So it's just a mix of things that it takes to reach people and to inspire them. And honestly, having worked in a different part of the government before, like I said, it's very easy with NASA's work to inspire people. This is the stuff of dreams and imagination and looking towards the future. I mean, this is what we do. So inspiration is an easy job for me.
I remember in 1981 being a little kid here in New York City. My dad got me a plastic model of the Space Shuttle Columbia, which was, of course, the first space shuttle. And having put that together, I was terrible at putting that together. That's how I knew I couldn't actually do anything scientific and be an astronaut. But I was so inspired watching that space launch and how NASA handled that entire arc of that journey long before Shux was born. Tej and Shux, we're going to now move to very quick, short answers to the questions because we're running out of time. So, Tej, what are you doing to inspire young folks?
Yeah, so the quick, easy answer is people like Shux and the other astronauts that go up and making sure that the science that they're doing is meaningful and the outreach reaches the most possible people in the most meaningful way. Now, to Anita's point about the rest of us, for me personally, I have almost made it a challenge that if someone tells me something is impossible, I will do it just to prove that it's possible. Because the reason for doing the impossible is you set the bar for what is possible. Mm-hmm. So for example, when it was doing the deal with India, people said that's not impossible. They're never going to fly. And I was like, I'll just go knock on the door of the embassy. And it's like, you can't do that. And I obviously wasn't going to just knock on the door of the embassy because they told me I couldn't. I actually just showed up and knocked on the door of the embassy. There was a lot more happening in the background, but somebody opened, and next thing I know, the previous ambassador and I became good friends. And this is also something that we have to show everyone. And this, as entrepreneurs, we have to show this. It's too easy for smart people to sit around a room and discuss why something can't be done. And it becomes a vicious circle of literally convincing yourself not to try. So like something my family and I have, we don't have the word can't in our family. You can say, I won't do it. You can say, I don't want to do it. But if you're saying you can't do it, then you're right. And that's just not how life operates.
John Lakshmi, who's watching Saja Treasure, points out that NASA has great internships, and his son was a NASA intern. So everyone, please look at that and opportunities for kids in your family, neighbors, children, grandchildren, etc. We of course know what Shubhanshu's and what Shux is already doing to inspire folks. But what can people who are watching, what can they tell their children from your experience, Shux?
Yeah, first thing I would like to thank Tej that he went and knocked on Indian Embassy's door. So thank you, Tej, for that opportunity. And I really break it down, like I said to you, that you asked me a really big question in the beginning of this session, and that was what inspired you to be an astronaut. And I broke it down, and I said that it wasn't one big thing; it was just a series of small steps that I took all along the way. And this is my advice to all the kids who are watching this, or maybe are going to be watching this, or that a task looks really big when you look at it as a whole from far, and that many times it demotivates us, or it kind of tells us that no, maybe it is too big and we can't approach it. A complex task is nothing but multiple simple tasks just joined together, and you just need to break it down. You don't have to look that far out. You do what you're doing right now and do it really well with your eyes set on the final goal, and not worry about what is going to happen in the end. And these small steps over a period of time are going to take you there, and it's going to be possible. And there's just take 30 seconds to say this. I was visiting my school back home and for a talk, and I went there, and all the kids were lined up, and I used to be sitting in one of the class, and that same class, one kid was standing, and when I entered that class and I was just going around, and I just overheard that kid was speaking to his teacher, and he said he was asking that did he used to study here, and the teacher said yes, and the kid turns around and says, so that means I can also be an astronaut. And my answer to all such kids is yes, you can be, and you can be anything that you want. It is just that you need to just take up something that you have right now in your hand and try to give it your best. That's the task that you have, and you don't have to get bogged down, by how big it is or how challenging this is in future. It doesn't matter. You just deal with what you have right now and do it as well as you can, and rest is going to all fall in place.
You're muted. You're
All
muted.
right, thank you so much. We have so many great questions and comments coming in. I see Vivat is watching. A Thai space blogger is joining from Thailand, where it's very early in the morning. Dr. Kamlesh Lula is at NASA Johnson Space Center and has a question for Tej. There are plans to deorbit ISS in the near future. What are Axiom Space's plans post-ISS human space flight from a commercial company?
Yeah, so commercialization right now is probably most easily defined as private companies providing services to the government, the largest stakeholder being NASA. And we, with our missions and our research and our science that we do on the missions, is part of our services we give to NASA. The additional commercialization that we brought to the table is bringing all these other nations in. And I think with collaboration with NASA has been phenomenal. And once our modules start going up in about 2 years, what we start doing is creating a commercial platform, not a government platform, not a taxpayer platform, but a private company's platform or a venture-backed company. And that will then provide services to the US and many other nations. And that is just the first layer of commercialization. That's taking the existing budgets that are going to space and applying them to a commercial platform. Where that grows is the new space superpowers like India, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and other countries. That's additional commercial revenue that comes in, and then opening it up to all countries. But still, that's not enough. For this to be an economy, for Axiom's investors to get the return that we're all hoping for, there has to be these exponential platforms. I think data centers will be the first one, but we're proving with our current missions and our commercial partners, with these 16 astronauts that went up, 100 plus corporations have gone, Fortune 100, Global 2000 companies. And right now it's baby steps, small investments in space and experiments. In the next 15 months, 24 months, you're going to see what I call mega deals. You're going to start seeing CEOs going out to the street and being rewarded for investing in space, just like they would in a weight loss drug or something else. And then once that happens, you'll see a pretty big shift in commercialization. Sorry, not a shift, a rapid revolution in commercialization in space.
Great, thank you. We just have a couple of minutes left. So what I'm going to do is read a couple of questions and then ask our speakers to incorporate those into their final thoughts. So one of the questions is about opportunities for Indian startups to work with NASA and the US private space sector. So that's a question that I know many people are wondering how they can get involved. And also, as you're looking at the next year, we're almost at the end of 2024, at 2025, what are the things we can look at? And Tej, also, if you can just, for novices about space, they've heard some brands in space, right? Jeff Bezos is going up. There is SpaceX. So if you can explain how you are similar or different from those, I think that would be helpful for folks who are trying to understand. And then we'll just get each of you just incorporate your final thoughts into that. So Anita, if we can start with you.
Okay, starting with me. So this was such a pleasure to be on this panel and to speak with all of you. And I don't know if you'd seen, but I was taking notes over here. You know, such good nuggets of advice from Tej and Shux. I really appreciate it. You know, what am I looking forward to in the next year? I think, so I'm actually looking a little past next year. We have Artemis launch coming up, you know, Artemis 2 at some point. Again, space is hard, so the date's a little unclear. So that'll be awesome. But I'm also looking at 2026, you know, as a part of my work, because it will be America's 250th anniversary. And what a milestone for this country. And what a milestone for us to look at the future. What does the next 250 years and more look like? And the fact that NASA has this niche, you know, thinking about leading humanity to the future. So that's what I'm thinking about. And I'm very hopeful that we will be a part of leading the national conversation on how we want to be in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, folks. That's Anita Day from NASA. We're so grateful to you, Anita, for being here and for spending the in-depth time that you have and being part of this. We're very grateful to you. And she's joining us from Washington at NASA headquarters, which folks who don't pay attention may forget that that's the headquarters. The other places you see a lot on TV are where the action happens, but a lot of the main work starts and ends in NASA at headquarters. So thank you very much, Anita Day. Thank you. Let's go to Tejpaul. Tej Bhatia is the Chief Revenue Officer of Axiom Space.
Yeah, so there was two questions I'll just quickly address in 30 seconds, and I'll use that as a way to map out the various players in the ecosystem and how Axiom fits there, and I'll give my final thought. You know, the way Indian companies, startups, US companies can participate is give us a call. My colleague, Pearlie, Sonia, Alexis, we're all on this. Look us up online, LinkedIn. We want space companies, new space companies, non-space companies to work in this economy, and there's plenty of opportunity. And we've seen it across all sectors. What you're seeing in terms of the ecosystem, you talked about Jeff Bezos, his company is called Blue Origin. You've got SpaceX, they're building the launch capability. And they made this very accessible now for people and things to get up. Where Axiom fits in, we're building the destination. So if they're the ferry, we're the venue. And it's what the ISS has been and the commercial stations will be moving forward. Axiom is also building the spacesuits for orbit and lunar as well. And then the final thought I want to give, Shux, it's a little bit for you, but Anita, we have a very similar story. Shux, being in Houston, which is one of the most diverse cities, maybe the most diverse city in the US, you're probably seeing several people like Anita and myself, Pearlie and other colleagues. You know, my dad came in 1970 to New York. My mom came in 1973, which, by the way, was the last two times and the only times the Knicks have ever won the NBA Finals. So this is our year. And Shux, when you come, we'll take you. Madison Square Garden is right there. I promise we're going to win this year. But when they came, there's a shift in our people. Some you might see that we look the same, but we're a little different. We sound funny. We pronounce our names a little funny compared to back home for you. My friend called it Indian hardware, but American software. And
Yes.
so it's an evolution, it's an iteration. And Sree, to your question about our culture, I'm going to bookend it to the oldest philosophers to the newest entrepreneurs. The founder of Indiaspora, like exactly what we're good at. Our historical philosophies use words that we're learning now from the James Webb telescope, right? They knew about trillions of stars and galaxies and things. How? I think they were making it up, but they were lucky. Good. It aligns together. Maybe they had some deeper connectivity, but then you look at all the entrepreneurs, the Fortune 100 CEOs, the businesses coming all around the world. This is the time. I won't say our time. Our time, Shux, like you said, when you go off planet, you'll be from Earth. You won't be from India. You won't be from your city. You'll be from school. You'll be representing all of us. But all of us means, a lot to us.
That's very beautifully put. Thank you. Let's go to Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, who you will hear as Shux a lot because it works for both his first and his last name. So over to you.
Just a question. Did you go off screen to read my name incomplete and then come back and pronounce it?
Oh, I was just double checking if you have a Twitter account. I wanted to make sure that you. That's also one of my questions. How can people follow your journey? Are you doing Twitter, Instagram? What are you going to be doing?
So that's all in the plan, and probably very soon we are going to be. So this is something new for us as well. We have not had something like this in the past, and there used to be an official handle for our space agency, which is still there. So this is all being formulated as we speak, and I'm sure something is going to come up, and we would have a presence everywhere, and so people can follow this journey from where they want to. And first of all, I would like to thank everyone on this panel as well as you, Sree. I think, kudos to you to have such great questions, and, people responded really, really nicely. And I got a lot of insight from all the panelists. I think that was great. But just on a point that they said, I don't think, that the people out here are very different. Actually, I joke with my crew that when I go to NASA, I actually run into more Indians at NASA than I run back home at ISRO. So there are so many people who are working here. So it's great. But what I really liked about this was that we are a group of probably first generation, second generation Indian Americans, or a lot of people from who have the origin in India, and we get together on a platform to discuss issues. And we are not discussing of uplifting only this particular group or the people who are here. No, we get together and we talk about uplifting the society in general. And I think that's a great thing that we have, and I think that is a sentiment we should go forward with. I really, really appreciate that, and I think that is a great way to move forward. Taking everybody along, because I truly believe that space has space for everyone. So we should be working towards making that happen, and that would be a great goal for all of us to achieve.
I love that space. There's space and space for everyone. That's wonderful. I've seen that Shobha has put in our in diaspora link. Alexis has put in the press inquiries. Alexis at axiomspace.com. Pearlie has also put her information. Pearlie at axiomspace.com. And I want to thank Alexis, Pearlie, Shobha, Tara Ruff from Digimentors for helping put this together. Whenever we talk about space, we want to tell you about our in diaspora board member, Priyamvada Natarajan, Professor Natarajan, in the Yale Astrophysics Department, who has written this book, Mapping the Heavens, the Radical Scientific Ideas that Reveal the Cosmos. So you want to inspire your kids to get into space and understand that they should be reading this particular book. And she's a great, of course, member of In-Diaspora. If you want to get involved with In-Diaspora, please do, and contact Shobha and the entire team. Thank you very much, everyone. We want to thank In-Diaspora. We want to thank Axiom Space, SAJA, the South Asian Journalists Association. I'm Sree Sreenivasan, thanking you all for your attention. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but maybe this will make sure that we come back again and do this. We don't have to wait all those years for all the great programs coming. We want to celebrate Shux when he comes back as well. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll say goodbye now. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.